I've talked a lot about this, is that we don't have a talent shortage. We don't have a labor shortage in the United States. We have a mismatch of talent to open to opportunities.
Welcome back to the podcast. Today I'm joined by Andrew Fernholz, the CEO of Ambient Consulting, a leading name in the IT services and consulting space. At RevGenAI, we build AI automated outbound and thought leadership podcast systems for B2B founders, and this show is where we spotlight growth-minded leaders who are driving innovation in their industries. Today, we're going to explore how Andrew and his team are creating impact, scaling growth, and shaping the future of IT services, security, and AI augmented delivery. Andrew, it's great to have you. Of
Thanks, Mark, for having me today.
course. So I guess a good place for us to start. Can you share about how Ambient Consulting got started and really what your main focus is today in the IT services and consulting space?
Sure, sure. So Ambient was founded back in 2001. It was a combination of two and a half, actually, consulting firms that combined together to form Ambient. And the primary focus back then was high-end project and consulting services. It started with an expansion into Vietnam, first of its kind back then in 2002 in a development center build-out. And since then, obviously, has grown and dived into a lot of different types of services and capabilities. When I came on board about 2.5 years ago, my goal was to also continue the transformation of ambient business, really focusing in on what the value proposition is to the customer, where a lot of these organizations will defer to lower end services, especially during weaker economic times, but really focusing back on what can really bring true value, but also have a more of a 10x revenue approach to the execution and desire for those types of opportunities. So it's been a fun ride to watch how Ambience transformed over the years, but obviously now really moving into the next evolution of where those organizations headed. Fun and exciting times with AI now on the forefront.
I can't even imagine what things are going to look like in 6 months, let alone, the next couple of years. I think everything, so many industries are going to change. Life as we know it will change. It's almost like, I mean, I was too young to really go through the full perspective shift of like the internet coming and how that changed everything. But I think it's going to be a similar shift like that, where life as we know it is going to really take a big shift. So I am curious about that. Like, how are the current shifts and trends in AI really like changing how you're actually operating day to day or how you're serving your clients? Can you give us
Mhm.
some insight into what you're looking at?
Well, I think we have a very robust and supported AI practice at Ambient, where we engage with a lot of different types of customers, from small to medium-sized organizations to some of the largest enterprises, and helping them navigate the landscape of where AI can be applied today. Where what the Dispelling a lot of the myths, because there's a lot of hype out there. And I believe we're really now kind of getting into that post honeymoon phase, realizing that, yes, some things are going to change. Are they going to change at the pace that everybody's calling for? And anything from where we're seeing adaptations to almost in some cases a replacement of human intervention, which is a very scary proposition, because I really don't believe we're there yet. I really believe right now AI is here to augment what we do, make us more efficient, and really bring us into a level where our jobs do change. Our jobs will change, but not as significantly as complete replacement of that individual. Been a lot of hype around vibe coding, and now with Claude Code and replacing the need for developers and engineers. The challenge with that, of course, is the verification of that code, understanding that it actually is applicable, but also realizing that the machine and AI intelligence today is not where it needs to be to really think cognitively about what needs to be done, and understanding the business in which that code that case is being applied for. And so we're seeing obviously a lot of hype and a lot of money being spent from larger organizations that's not getting the return on investment, which is kind of bringing that whole cycle back to saying, pause, what are we really doing here? What are we? Yeah. And what we found through all of that is the majority of organizations that are trying to jump on this AI bandwagon are not prepared for it, culturally, behaviorally, in a lot of cases, technically. What we're finding in a lot of cases with organizations is that data, or having clean data or tokenized data, really results in higher impact and potential larger ROI for AI. But when you put intelligence on top of bad data, you can only understand what might come out from all of that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that that's a wise perspective to actually focus not on the hype. We can all get hype ourselves up and get excited about the next thing. It does take some grounding to actually focus on the principles that don't change. And I really like how you're focused on results and ROI, because those are fundamentals of business that are not going to change.
Mhm.
So let's talk about that. I'm really intrigued to understand how you actually deliver outcomes and focus on results with ambient consulting. What is your process or framework
Mhm.
do to actually help your clients with their needs, and can you give us some examples?
Taking a step back when we're engaging with a client, it first and foremost is education, right? It's really kind of getting to the core root of how to look at AI as it relates to their business. I think a lot of organizations have been challenged with working directly with the IT departments, and really who you need to talk with and who you need to work with and who you need to educate are the business leaders, the operations folks and the C-suite, and folks that can really understand the business processes. So first things first is education. I think the second part of that is really working with the organization on strategy, right? What is it? In a lot of cases, when it comes to strategy and that education is going through what we call a rubrics of understanding where there potentially could be use cases to be applied, and then weighing that based upon cost and value. And so you're looking at the four quadrants. It's really taking all those use cases and putting them into that quadrant, the rubrics, to understand, okay, what is the first thing we want to tackle, right? And what would be potentially the result of it, right? So if you're spending $1.5 million on AI automation, and it's really only bringing an efficiency ratio of 300,000, is that the wisest move to do? Are you doing it for adoption only purposes, or are you doing it to really drive value? And so it's walking organizations through that process and then really coming back with a roadmap of what needs to be done and where. Sometimes it's taking a little bit of a chunk of the bite of the apple and making a proof point. In some cases, it's a holistic makeover that really has to happen. Everything from providing secure LLMs for your workers, and then it's training those workers on actually how to use it. I think we're fastly approaching a world where education and training and upskilling is going to be extremely vital. And that's obviously one of the reasons why intelligent learning was created, was bridging that gap. I've talked a lot about this, is that we don't have a talent shortage. We don't have a labor shortage in the United States. We have a mismatch of talent to opportunities. And I think the other part of that is really organizations need to be rapidly upskilled in this area. But prior to them getting upskilled in AI, we're looking at the need to really help them understand their business, and also ensure that the workers and the individuals that are applying the AI technology understands the core function of their role and are competent in the current role that they have. And then a lot of it's about planning for the future. We have one organization that we're working with right now on two fronts. One is organizational design and understanding where the efficiencies are. They're challenged with the need to grow rapidly. And so the first thing we really wanted to work with them on was understanding what the current structure looks like. How are the leaders interacting with each other? How's the rank and file working with leadership? How the boards are interacting with the C-suite, and really understanding that matrix, understanding what needs to be done differently. And then it's looking at what their AI strategy is, because at the end of the day, they want to double the amount of fund managers that they want to add to their organization. And without having any sort of AI knowledge and understanding of what can be applied today, you're basically repeating the mistake of the past, which is basically saying if we want to scale our operations, we need to double our headcount. Not looking at what can truly scale the business, which is some of that is the technology. And so it's working with an organization on multiple fronts, but specifically analyzing, do you really need to double your headcount to grow this fund? Can you re-educate and bring the current employees up to speed to make them more efficient, and realizing that maybe it's a 25% headcount add or a 40% headcount add versus a 100% headcount add? So that's just one example, real life example of some of the challenges organizations have and how we're approaching those initiatives. Another example in the healthcare space is an organization that's probably about 5 or 6 years old, still kind of in that startup mode. And one of their core functions is correlating patient data and matching them to potential treatment options, kind of for rare and emerging diseases. That would not be possible today, or would be completely unaffordable today, if they were having to bring in more doctors and physicians to analyze that data and work through that data, as opposed to having all that correlated and having that right in front of the doctor to understand, okay, these are matches, and this is, there's a little bit of validation that has to still happen, right? Doctor's not going to sign off on a treatment plan for somebody without doing a double check and triple check, but it cuts down, what we're estimating will cut down about 40% of the time doctors use to correlate that patient data.
Fascinating.
Quite frank, where the board has committed, has commented to me a number of times, without this, we don't have a business model. We don't have a scalable business model to be able to really truly bring that organization to the next level.
Yeah. What I take from everything that you just went through, all these examples, is really beyond like the hype and the current trends of focusing on, whatever shiny new thing is come out, is, like the new result that everybody's chasing or positioning themselves as. It's clear that you're operating with clear, sound frameworks. To come in and say the first thing that you need to focus on is education and strategy. But then the other thing that you said, which I really focus on as well, is just questioning, well, do you actually really need to solve the problem that way? Do you need to grow your headcount to solve this problem this way? And this is how we also look at things now internally, is like, also with our use with AI, is we start to think, is there a different way that we can do this? Are we seeing things in a certain way and don't see other ways of thinking about the problem? And almost just like opening that paradigm shift to where you can come in and think of a problem in a completely different way, I know can also just really bring a lot of value to have somebody like you who just thinks with these solid principles.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really curious to ask you about a whole entire different aspect of your businesses, and specifically Ambient Consulting. Looking at the marketing, because this is what we focus on. We're fundamentally a marketing agency, and so beyond just thinking about what's the latest strategy, we always seek to understand really what's the fundamentals of what's working best in terms of marketing. So from your point of view, what has worked best for you for marketing or client acquisition, even your positioning?
Well, Myra, I can tell you that it's changed about 18 times in the last 2 years. And a lot of that comes down to trends if you're looking at LinkedIn specifically to approach new customers, those algorithms are changing, right? One day, posts are opened up if they have a video attached, right? They have a higher likelihood clicking open and reviewing when there's a video, and then it's shifted to documents or images, um, and then it's flipped back to text and approach. I think generally speaking, what is a multi-channel approach, right? Yes, LinkedIn has got a lot of value, but it's not the end all to be all. And I think we're seeing that while the change is what appeals or what gets the algorithm to move and put out there, um, but it's really moving quickly from thought leadership to actually sales gen, right? Yes, you need to have credibility. You do need to see it. But I also realize that these tools are aided, at least for my staff, is aided to help build relationships, right? In our business, it's about relationships and trust. And, the fallacy that you sent out a bunch of direct mail and you're going to get a bunch of customers in our line of business is a little bit of fool's error. I think we're also seeing a lot of the AI generated messaging to be all over the board and not appreciative. I mean, I'm looking at my inbox right now from last night, and I've got over 300 emails that went to junk that were all people prospecting using AI interactions. It's allowing for the automation of AI and the ability to augment some of your writing and some of your creation, but it's realizing that you still have to be authentic. And I think that's where AI is challenged with today is being authentic to your approach to people. Um, there's a way to automate customized messages, but you do have to spend the time and patience to really look at what is it that you're appealing to and being a lot more directed versus the broad thought leadership discussion. It's really being directed towards the individual on what can bring them value. And I think for us, we've seen a lot more opportunity being uncovered by sharing case studies and experiences that they can relate to. Some of our biggest cloud migration work is fascinating, and it's where we've been able to save the company money and improve on the time of delivery and everything else. But that may not necessarily appeal to a CIO that's being mandated by the CEO to go install AI and try to figure it out. And so a lot of those calls we get are people just looking for information. They're just like, we're freaking out. We don't know where to go with this. We're being told we have to do it, and how do we do it? And so it's appealing. Yes, it is appealing from a thought leadership standpoint, recognizing that we've been there and done it, but actually being able to describe what has the outcome been with these engagements, right? Because that's the number one thing I look for when I'm talking to new vendors, and let's get to the point. How are we going to bring this cool thing to reality, and more importantly, how are we going to continue to focus on ROI? And so that's been a lot of more of our targeted approach in marketing these days has been specific to the technology or the business challenge those individuals are maybe facing.
Again, I'm impressed by just how you break it down to fundamentals. These things are not going to change. Whatever the trends are, being able to show up, being able to actually present the outcome that people care about, being able to build relationships, show your authenticity, showcase things that are relatable, like case studies that are relevant. These things are never going to change. And being able to like break things down into those principles, of course, the trends, the tools that we use are going to be shifting, and we're going to continue to find new strategies, new optimizations based off of what the current trends are. But if you really break it down, a lot of times, people can just sense when you have that feeling about your brand, and they start to get that feeling from you that you're not just for the noise. Right? And so focusing first primarily on how you say things, how you actually communicate with the market, I think that that's really smart strategy. and that will withstand, you know, all the trends and shifts that we're going through.
I think the biggest lift we've gotten from AI has been the research capabilities, right? One of the things I tell a lot of our sales teams over the years is research who you're talking to, right? Find out what's important to those people, because that's the only way you're going to be able to try to provide value to somebody. Cold or somewhat lukewarm is to really understand who you're talking to, what your audience is, and utilizing a couple of AI products out there, we've been able to canvas and collect 300-400 contacts at a time and have kind of a short bio all prepared within seconds for that sales rep or for that marketing team to really digest and understand. And so that's typically in the past, back in the day when I used to do the old school research, and maybe it was Google at the time, or maybe it was even Dun and Bradstreet's type of information that I would have to pay for. Is spend hours collecting and looking at trying to find an individual and understand what makes that individual tick, and more importantly, what's going to be important to them. Now that can be done in seconds.
It is, yeah, and it's fascinating. We obviously have the same tools, the same systems that we've been just improving more and more and more.
Mm-hmm.
But to bring it back to what you said before, I think the biggest lesson that I've learned on really like what actually works is to not over rely on AI, to keep the human and authentic feeling,
Mm-hmm.
and really just focus again. Like we if I break down what we do, the simplest understanding is we help our clients build more relationships. We connect them with their
Mm-hmm.
ideal companies, and start a value first relationship,
Mm-hmm.
and we may have the capability to where we have uh, so much enriched data on this person before we reach out. But what actually matters is, does this sound human? Does this actually make the person reading it feel like they were actually noticed and felt valued and significant, right? These principles stay the same. um, and yeah, I really like just how you've been breaking down um, your thought process, and just like the frameworks that you use when you think about these different aspects of business. um, and thank you for bringing all this to the conversation today, Drew. uh, for anyone who does want to reach out, who's listening and wants to learn more about you or Ambient Consulting or any of the other startups that you're running, where's the best place for them to find you?
AmbientConsulting.com.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Drew. It was a great conversation.
Appreciate the time, Meyer.